Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the NILG.AI podcast. Today we have with us Simon Schnieders from BlueArray, so co-founder and CEO of BlueArray, basically the largest SEO specialist in the UK in search engine optimization and generative engine optimization. So if people haven't crafted SEO yet, it seems like there is a new thing that we need to catch up with. So thank you for being here, Simon.
Yeah, pleasure, Kelvin. Yeah, a little bit about that transition for us as an agency. I think there are facets of SEO that have distinct names. So, for instance, technical SEO, local SEO, news SEO, and they're all quite distinct conceptually anyway. And so generative engine optimization is conceptually very distinct from SEO. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But it's still under the umbrella of SEO, but it's conceptually a slightly different area of SEO.
Okay. So SEO as a whole is we want to rank on top of search engines, right? So that's the whole principle.
Yeah, I mean, primarily it's about increasing your ranking and therefore your visibility and therefore your clicks. I mean, there's still depending upon where you're positioned in a search results page. Position 1 will typically get you a 33% click-through rate. Position 5% click-through rate, and then sort of diminishing values thereafter. And of course, that can all be interrupted with things like AI overviews. We have this AI snippet above your organic results, where sometimes you have zero-click searches. So people perform a search, but they then don't need to click a result because the AI overview has answered the query for them. So there's a lot disrupting the space at the moment in terms of organic clicks.
Okay, so if the goal of SEO is to be on the top of Google searches, Bing searches, so on search engine searches, what will be the goal of GEO, Generative Engine Optimization? To be named by the AI? Should your company be named by the AI?
Yeah, great question. There's two parts to it. One is visibility, so being mentioned as a brand within the response that is generated back from the large language model, and then cited as well. And a citation may mean a hyperlink and then a click to a website or an app. So yeah, there's two parts to that primarily. But I think we'll, within the space of search engine optimization, when we're more focused on generative AI applications, I mean, specifically we're talking about large language models here, then it will be more about increasing brand visibility than anything else. So I think we'll see less and less of the click being available and therefore the conversion, but it will be more about brand visibility than anything else, I believe.
Okay, so it will be more about awareness than click, since you cannot control necessarily the URLs and the links.
Yeah, exactly. So less about if you're in the area of SEO at the moment, forget about keywords and URLs. It's not going to be about that in the future, and the future is going to happen quite rapidly as well. So we already have AI overviews within search results, even though they're supposedly still experimental. They're rolled out into core, so it's difficult for Google to say they're still experimental, but they say that is. In the US, there's something called AI mode, which is also available to a small subset of users, and that's where you have a chatbot LLM, just like ChatGPT, for instance, as a tab on a Google search results page. Google has a long history with adding things in tabs. So Google Shopping started as a tab, something called Frugal, Google Local, Google News. All of these started off as a tab, and then they eventually made their way into core search as well. So I certainly believe that users will want to see more of that AI mode within core search results, because for certain queries, and it will, I think, be query dependent, these large language models do a really good job of what Google terms as being a query fan out technique. And what that means specifically is, if you search for something like best portable speakers, for instance, currently with search engines being the way they are and being quite keyword and URL focused, that tends to be which pages are best optimized for the terms best portable and speakers, whereas a large language model will interpret that query and try and understand the intent behind it to what does the user mean by best? So what does best mean? Well, that would mean things like portability, sound quality, price, all of these factors being included in the response that's then generated back. So that's where I think this idea of query fan out, which is something that Google termed, by the way, and I really like it as a term. I think previously I would refer to it as large language models reasoning their way to providing a response for you, but query fan out is a good way to describe it, I think. To what does the user mean when it's asking for best portable speakers, and then going off and doing the research for you, essentially, and then generating a response based on that research.
Okay. Would that mean that people need to adjust the way they build their blog articles, their websites, in response to this?
Yeah, almost 100% flip from what we're doing in the world of SEO at the moment. So once you understand query fan out, then you need to understand when the query fans out into these different areas, such as price, portability, sound quality. How do we as a brand perform in those areas? What's the sentiment around us? So I'll give you an example of Porsche, where if you search for best luxury SUVs, you're unlikely to see the Porsche SUV appear. And that's not because Porsche doesn't have a good SUV, it has a great SUV, arguably. It's just that the LLMs understand best as meaning safety is an important factor.
Yeah.
And Porsche just don't talk about safety, they never have. And so if we were advising Porsche, we would be saying, you need to understand what publications are authoritative in the eyes of large language models and start producing content around safety. And you can't just sort of crudely then say, well, we're going to say that Porsche is a really safe vehicle. You've got to start talking about the facets of safety, such as airbag deployment, etc. So what makes it a safe vehicle? So that's the new era that we're heading into. Is I think that if you think about query fan out, and when that query fans out, what does it fan out into, and then how are we servicing that fan, essentially?
Okay.
What's the sentiment around that?
And I guess it's a much more tricky challenge to solve because it's more implicit and more semantic than just keyword matching, getting enough backlinks, and having the right explicit keywords. It's more about even how you frame the speech, how you frame the phrases, and what message does that convey.
I think we've got some really great reporting that we can use to understand what this fan out looks like for large language models. So we can take an example like shoes, for instance, and we know that the large language models are looking at fit, comfort, arch support, material quality, all those sorts of things. And we can get to that by querying these models across sort of 6 key vectors and then thousands of queries. And at scale, we can start to understand which model has which preferences, and then what's the probability of our brand versus competitors appearing within these large language models as well. Yeah. And then, of course, we can understand which resources the models are most frequently citing to understand what publications we need to influence to help educate these models as well. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. Because with SEO, I guess it's mostly about having good content in your website and having enough references, backlinks to your website. But now, since it is awareness and you don't care that much about the link, but the explicit mention of your company, is where should I appear, right?
Exactly. However, and there's a big however to all of this, the caveat is that these models also use something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG for short, where they do go off and use search indexes as well to ground their responses. Yeah. And I think this is a misunderstanding from the SEO community, who are largely dismissive of generative engine optimization. But the large language models don't always use retrieval augmented generation. It's computationally expensive to do that for every query, right? So they tend to rely mostly on the corpora of content that they've ingested, which is largely the internet, right? So that's SEO is a part of this future, but it's not, I would say, the main element of this. But I definitely see that, from what people are feeding back about this AI mode in Google, that it's doing a much better job of servicing their queries because it's doing that query fan out technique. And I think that is something that users on the whole are going to be demanding more and more of, is this seeming ability for these large language models to reason, although of course it's not actual reasoning, it's a illusion, but it
or maybe
appears
we have the illusion that we are reasoning and we are not as a humans.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Maybe we are just doing computation in our brain with electricity and chemicals. Yeah, but that's interesting. So is you don't foresee a future where it's going to be SEO versus GEO, but a future where you have good GEO, there is a leverage on top of a good SEO, such that whenever an AI model does retrieval augmented generation, it gets also your relevant sources.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that there would be a divide there in the sense of companies that have invested in, significantly in SEO but haven't thought about geo and only perform well when retrieval augmented generation comes into play, right? So only for certain queries that the LLM deems deserving of retrieval augmented generation will they appear, which means, I think there's going to be a big shape shift in the kind of brands that are doing very well within the future of search. And that landscape can change almost overnight as well. So I'll give you an example of that. Trustpilot at the moment don't allow any of these large language models to ingest their content, and that's either for training or search. If that were to change tomorrow, then that would change the landscape of these large language models tomorrow as well, because they seem to rely quite heavily on review websites, and you would imagine they would do. So something like that, just as something as simple as review site opening up their content, can just change the dynamics of this overnight. So it's a fast shifting world anyway.
Yeah. And have you seen major changes for the good or for the bad on existing websites' performance before and after Gen AI? Like visits dropping a lot on certain domains or certain industries, or so far so good?
I think there are certain brands that you think it's unfair that the large language model has assessed it in that way, but it is what it is. It's just a reality of the way that these models work, and it's incumbent on that brand to do the work to improve in that certain area. So again, that Porsche example, Porsche, don't deserve to be relegated to the fact that they've never spoken about safety, but that's just a reality of it. And then it's incumbent on Porsche to do something about that, or not. They may choose not to, but yeah.
Exactly. And do you foresee a future where we produce content for AI models and then we produce content for humans, and we need to kind of duplicate our effort on content? Or it's like we have a joint effort on content that will be optimized for SEO and simultaneously for GEO?
Yeah, correct. I think the pair of them, if you can marry those two together, then that's a very nice spot to be in. I think there are certain bits of content that you may only want to make available to large language models, for instance. So I'll give you an example. We have a training academy at BlueArray, which is very popular. We have sort of 20,000 students in there. It's available as an online course at the moment. We could and probably will make it available as a text file for large language models to train upon. And we'll do that through the LLMs.txt, which is sort of a new area that seems to be getting some traction behind it anyway, where you can just open up your content without markup to large language models, and that's something that we're probably going to take advantage of.
LLMs.txt. So you need to add a file LLMs.txt inside your website?
Correct, yeah, and you can just put content in there specifically for large language models.
Nice. The other day, YouTube. So we have a YouTube channel. We reached the 100K last year, and at some point, it asked us if we wanted to allow AI models to be trained on our content. I just clicked yes because I want LLMs to learn that NILG.AI is a good partner, etc. That we have this way of thinking about AI. But I wasn't sure if that was the right call. But since the trend seems to be opening up to LLMs, so we get brand awareness by the LLMs.
I think it's very helpful. I mean, You're essentially teaching the LLMs that Kelvin is Fernandes is statistically significant in this particular area, right? So you're increasing your statistical significance.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Makes sense.
yeah.
Makes sense. By the way, so I've been following your posts on the SEO versus AI, and now it's more about GEO. But some months ago, you care deeply about the social contract on content production, right? Because the incentive for people that produce content, either blog articles, regular content on the internet, was to get traffic in the end to their websites, right? So that was the way Google pays out content producers, is by sending traffic to their websites so they can generate sales, leads, etc. If AI models are training on our content and they are not sharing those links with the end user as a reference, as a reference source, like there is like an unfair contract there, implicit contract that is happening. How has the field changed on this line? Is there any valid debate on having any new form of social contract for LLMs or?
Yeah, I just think the technology is moving so quickly and there's so much money behind it that the moral, ethical debate has just been left in the dust.
Okay.
So I think that's probably the least of my concerns, really. Like
Okay.
there's a moral and ethical debate that's first and foremost. But there has been good news from Google in saying that they understand that there's an ecosystem that they need to support as they improve their product. And by improving their products, that they mean moving towards AI mode, which is where a large language model is servicing a lot of their queries. And then ultimately, I think this leads to agentic AI. So I think the future of search is definitely agentic AI, and that's where they want to ultimately get to. And I think that's probably what users want as well, is their own personal assistant who's able to browse, shop, and book on their behalf. If it's personalized, it understands you well enough, why not? And then you get into a really scary dystopian future. But I think Google at the moment anyway is saying that they recognize the need at this stage anyway to continue to downstream traffic to publishers. And so I think you'll see links embedded in a way that tries to ensure that users are clicking links still anyway in the short term, until I guess synthetic data gets to the stage that they're not reliant on publishers anymore, potentially.
Okay. So you think like at some point, so we are changing from search through links to your website into search through answers on an LLM that, by the way the text is built, generates a certain brand awareness, to a future where maybe the customer doesn't even know that they bought the product from you because an AI agent not just manage the search explanation, preference adjustment, but also did the final purchase.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that will affect the whole customer relationship because you don't cannot rely on lifetime value or whatever because it's an AI agent that is doing that. So the one that you need to satisfy is the AI agent, not the end customer in that sense, maybe.
Yeah, the more interesting bit of that, I think, is how does Google monetize that? But I don't know. That's not for me to care about. That's for Google
Okay.
to care about. Yeah.
Yeah. So you think there will be like a marketplace for Google where they get a fee on any transaction that their
Yeah,
search
I'm
AI
sure.
agent will.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, that changes the game for Google. So it's not that much about advertising, but it's
Yeah,
about the value in the transaction.
I don't think it's that far away either. My own predictions are that we'll see the end of SERPs or search results pages as we know them by the end of 2027. So the way that we sort of see, typically 8 to 10 blue links on a page will have completely disappeared by then. Is
Okay.
my prediction anyway. Yeah.
Okay. What about copyright data, etc.? So at some point at the beginning of LLMs, there was this major debate whether the input data of the models can be copyrighted or not, and then whether or not the output of these models can be copyrighted, yes or no. That debate kind of slowed down, or nobody's talking about that anymore. Although Sam Altman is discussing now that they need to train with copyrighted data. if they want to compete with China, right?
Yeah, I think, as you're aware, these models improve with the more data that they're given. So the more data they have, the better the models get. So, and that's why they're looking at synthetic data to try and improve the models further as well. But I think that the copyright argument, you've got a few publishers who've been quite successful at defending their copyright, but ultimately I think brands need to be visible, and they want to be part of this future. And I just feel as though they're not necessarily being strong-armed into this, but or being strong-armed into fair usage, but to some degree they have no choice. They've got to do this. Yeah.
At some point they will do it. I guess it's a financial game in the end, at least with editorials. With the final author, maybe it's a different incentive, right? It's more of being recognized, etc. But
I
even if you
think
want to be recognized,
the loudest voices are often the big publishers, right? So they're all complaining about not being able to monetize newsrooms anymore, and that's fair, it is. But I also get that they're just not particularly creative either. So they're not taking advantage of this new landscape that's emerging, where you've got brands on the one hand who want to improve their visibility within large language models. They don't all know that at the moment, but they will do soon. And that they need to publish content. And then you've got publishers who have the platforms that they can publish on, and somehow they just haven't connected the dots there. But when they do, that's could be a real revenue driver for them as well. At the moment, these models aren't, I don't think, particularly great at distinguishing between editorial and advertorial in the same way that Google has been algorithmically in core search, and there's opportunity there, for instance. It's whether publishers can get to recognize their position in this new landscape and then execute on it is the big question.
I guess the business model will need to be rethought in the same way that you're opening some part of BlueArray Academy to LLMs, even if that was a private sponsor, like premium content for your paying users. Now you're moving to LLM because you recognize that the business model is changing, and then you need to focus on awareness, then to be recognized as a brand. I guess editorials, publishers will need to rethink, I guess, their business model and to decide their business model with this AI.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. So tell me about Ask SEO. Did you already launch the product? What is the current stage?
Yeah, we're almost there. I'm very excited to get this available and get more users testing it. It's something that we really want to get moving on quickly.
Perfect. So do you want to take the opportunity to showcase the problem it solves and what early feedback you are getting on the product?
Yeah, I would do. So thank you. I think the challenge we've seen in the past has been that SEO is a very subjective field, and it would be nice to have a tool that could ground users in the sense of, is the SEO advice I'm getting correct? Is the SEO advice I'm giving correct? And we thought it would be great to build a tool that you could upload a document perhaps that you're about to send a client and have it validate your recommendations based on the training data that's been given. And we've made sure that the training data that the large language model has is best in class. So we're confident about that side of things. It's whether or not we can get sort of widespread adoption with it, which is sort of the big question mark. But it would be nice to have it as sort of as a benchmark of quality, that your recommendations have been vetted by Ask SEO, was what we were trying to build with them.
Perfect. And is the business model going to be based on a subscription or based on the seal of quality by Ask SEO?
Yeah, we'll do a freemium model, so you'll be able to freely use the product up until a certain amount of uses per month, and then you'll need to pay to play. But we want to try and make it as widely accessible as possible. Ultimately, if we can improve the quality of consultancy in our industry, that helps us as a business as well. I think that's one of the biggest problems we've got in the world of SEO, is that it's so subjective, and it's an unregulated industry. So how do you, to some degree, regulate it and make sure that recommendations you're giving are vetted and verified.
Yeah. So it's like building a standard for SEO. Like what are the good practices around SEO?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Okay. That's nice. So you're trying to build the standard of AI adoption. So what are the good practices on an AI solution? I guess it makes sense to have like an ISO standard of SEO that is maybe not an ISO with all the bureaucracy of ISO, but that is practical and that can be used on a day-to-day basis to anyone working on SEO. So tell me, what is your most controversial thought about generative engine optimization and the impact on AI or on SEO, and try to defend that controversial thought.
Honestly, I just have to post the acronym GEO on LinkedIn, and I seem to get taken down in flames immediately. With there's no such thing as GEO. You're making this up, and so I don't have to do very much to be controversial. I am worried about the future of our industry genuinely, and then there are some very influential people within the world of SEO who are saying that it's not a thing, it's not real, it doesn't exist. And I think, being in that level of denial is quite worrying. It's very concerning for me that people who are influenced by these influencers, that's what they do, believe that there isn't anything further to do than just what we're doing in the world of SEO currently. And that's just not true at all. Your legs are going to be taken from under you very, very quickly if you don't get to grips with this new world. And I think SEOs are very well positioned to conceptually shift from keywords and URLs into educating the corpora of text that these models are trained upon. And I want to try and help them with that shift, but all I have to do is put GEO into LinkedIn, press post, and immediately I'm controversial apparently. So yeah, bizarre.
So even the name itself is controversial, you think?
It's very controversial. I mean, I get it as well. The people that are talking about generative engine optimization at the moment, there's a lot of rubbish out there about it. A lot of it is just misconceptions about what it is. But I think, once you make that conceptual shift, then it becomes quite easy to get to grips with, and then it's nascent. I mean, we're learning as we go with it, just as we did with SEO as well in its early days as well. There was lots of experimentation and lots of people who were saying it's not a thing, it doesn't exist. So it feels like going back, 20, for my career anyway, 25 years to the infancy of SEO, and people saying it's not real, it doesn't exist, to companies like Amazon, for instance, who were first movers within the SEO world, completely dominating as a result. So yeah.
I was checking now on the internet. So the first search engine appeared in the 90s, right? On 1990, so the year I was born.
Yeah.
At least the web search engine. And then Google search only became dominant now 2000 something, right? So it's an industry that maybe has 25 years, 35 years at most. I wouldn't expect it to be such change adverse, right? So
Very, but I think it's just fear more than anything else. People are scared of the unknown, and I get that. So I'm trying to do what I can to make it less scary. But yeah, I'm doing a bit of a roadshow at the moment to try and educate anyone that's willing to listen and learn more about generative engine optimization done properly.
do you already have courses on BlueArray Academy on GEO?
No, not yet. We may do something like that in the future. We're very busy at the moment, just helping our customers to get to grips with this future. So once we have some breathing space, we'll probably do a bit more in terms of webinars and getting out and trying to reach a wider audience. But just for now, I'm sort of saying on LinkedIn, anybody who wants to reach out and spend 30 minutes with me, I've got a really great presentation to take you through and help you understand more about GEO.
Nice. Now let's play again. Let's take your controversial thought and let's try to defend the counter argument so that GEO is not a thing and that it will never change SEO. I agree with you, GEO is a thing. I have already seen it happening, and if you see the younger generations, they don't search on Google, they search on ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever engine they're using. But let's try to imagine a world where generative engine optimization will not succeed and will not move the way we build content. How would you defend that?
So I think that I'd be very welcoming of that world. I think, the large language models are, they have challenges. I think they're not as a source of knowledge to be relied upon. I'd rather perhaps it wasn't that way. I'd rather that users were able to critically analyze the search results they got back and use discovery. So search and discovery in the traditional sense of you're going through disparate sources of information trying to reason your own way to truth, I think is a very important thing to be doing for the human species. But I think when you dumb it down and have a large language model essentially provide the response for you, that's taking away a lot from society at large. So I would, if large language models for whatever reason were to implode and people decide that that's not the future that they want, then I would quite welcome that, and we're back to traditional SEO again. So
you don't need to rethink the business. You don't need to change your practices. Just go back to
exactly.
business
I
as
mean,
usual.
I was. This is not an easy thing for me to talk about in the sense of I've built my entire business around SEO, and we have a team of over 25 professional practitioners within the agency, expert consultants, best in the business, who are working for us. And for me to have to tell them we're going to need to reinvent our business to a large degree anyway is something that's quite difficult for everyone to swallow. But I've spent a long time doing my research, and over the winter I was pretty much holed up in Seville here, spending the entire time just obsessing about this area and what's the future going to be and where should we be investing as an agency for our customers. And this train is unstoppable. Like there is no stopping this particular train. So I'm completely invested in it at this stage anyway, and I see no other future apart from this.
Yeah, I also tell my team the following, which is the first job that will be replaced by AI is AI engineer, because AI is becoming more of a commodity than a very deep tech thing that you need to take a PhD to properly train an AI model. Nowadays, everybody can just prompt something and bring some data from your CRM and get ticket categorization and response generation and a lot of stuff, even with no code automation. So even a non-programmer can build automations nowadays for their businesses. So the way we think about our industries will change regardless on which industry we are. And maybe the ones that will be affected the most are the ones that we are not even considering, like AI engineers. So it's like, I believe doctors will be replaced easier or faster than nurses. In general, people do not think about that. Like,
Sure.
not, like a doctor, is the highest social degree we could get. I mean, everybody envisions to be a doctor, but maybe it's a job that we can replace if LLMs become very good. Same thing for AI engineers, right? And there are other industries such as SEO that will be as relevant in 20 years as will be now, but maybe with a different set of practices, of good
Correct.
practices and ways of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've also, as a business, we're focusing on what's called the 3 Cs. So this was announced to the business during the all hands. But the 3 Cs for us are culture. So making sure that everybody in the business is happy and content, and we have the kind of culture that everybody wants to be working within, and something that magnetizes customers to want to work with us as well. I mean, when you have a happy team, then you have happy customers. That's the way that these things work. Humans will want to interact with humans. That will always be the case. So regardless of, as an agency anyway, how we're understanding and interpreting brand visibility for our customers, then they will still want to interact with humans. So we now have a customer charter, customer service manifesto, and these things are hugely important for, I think, the future of any agency anyway, is to to focus on the customer and that customer centricity more than anything else. So you've got, customer centricity, you've got culture, and the third one was curiosity. So how do we become more curious about our customers and their brands? So, how do we make our point of contact look like the hero of the story that we're narrating together, for instance? And so we need to understand deeply about the customers' needs and wants and what are the priorities in the business and that sort of thing. So,
Yes. Just to wrap up, if you will need to summarize your experience in SEO versus AI or SEO versus GEO in 3 insights to explain it for a business that is embracing GEO, what will be those 3 insights?
So 3 insights.
Or 3
One,
recommendations for anybody embracing GEO.
so I'd start with something like DeepSeek, for instance, and start asking some questions of DeepSeek. So within your particular industry or category of focus, let's say it is portable speakers, for instance, or luxury SUVs. What are the best brands in X, where X is your category or industry, for instance? And I would query DeepSeek around lots of questions like that, and you can get to see this query fanning or how the model reasons its way to providing responses. Equally, you can just ask those questions of LLMs like ChatGPT, for instance, and then afterwards say, how did you reason to finding this response? And it will let you know, well, I considered this, this, and this. And then going a bit deeper, how do you then understand your visibility within those areas that the query has fanned into? I think would be the first insight I'd give anyway.
Any reason for it to be DeepSeek? It's just because of the reasoning explanation?
Yeah, it gives you the reasoning before it gives the explanation, right? So you can see essentially how it gives the illusion anyway of reasoning its way through to providing a response for you. Yeah.
Okay, good.
The next one would be to go into user-generated content forums like Reddit, for instance, and search for your brand and see if there's anything negative in there about it. An example of that would be that we had at one stage a company passing themselves off as BlueArray who were doing a scam, and that the scam was a sort of work from home opportunity scam. So people were getting messages on WhatsApp saying, hey, we're BlueArray, we've got this task that we'd like you to do, and we'll pay you X amount of dollars per hour to complete the tasks. It's called a task scam, is the name of the scam. And they were using BlueArray's brand name, they were using our color scheme and registering domains with blue-array-work.com and that sort of thing. And I was working hard to try and get those domains removed as soon as I was becoming aware of them. So I was going straight to the registrar and saying, by the way, this is a scam company, we're the official company, here's our trademark, and please can you remove them? But there was some chatter on Reddit about us, and I went into the messages on Reddit and then directly answered them and said, hey, I'm the CEO of the business. I'm aware of the scam going on. We're doing everything we can to protect customers, etc. Thankfully, I did that because when you query a large language model about BlueArray's brand reputation, for instance, it will say that we had issues with scammers passing themselves off as us, but you can avoid this by going to their official website at bluearray.co.uk. So we've managed to fix that negative sentiment against our brand by actively going out and answering users' questions around that on the forum. So whether that, and again, this goes back to things like user reviews about your brand. You need to be actively involved in answering those reviews as well. Or you can get an understanding of where models are likely to be getting their education from by perhaps looking at their robots.txt file. It's a bit deep, but you can sort of see, are they blocking ChatGPT from searching us or searching that website? So for instance, Trustpilot is somewhere where at the moment you wouldn't want to invest as much time trying to fix bad reviews as some of the other review websites that are open to large language models, for instance. But you still, they're going to open up at some stage. As soon as someone swoops in with a multi-million-dollar deal, they'll open up at some stage.
Yeah.
And then I guess finally, maybe if there's a particular category that your brand is wants to be known for, it's that idea of query fanning. I think you've got to understand what is it fanning out into. So if it's portable speakers, what are the facets of portable speakers that it's fanning out into? So design, price, durability, portability, battery life, and then what's your visibility in those areas and sentiment. So you can query the models again and sort of say, my brand is X. What's the sentiment around us for portable speaker portability, for instance? And then again, that will give you areas to work upon.
Okay. And then you will try to address those questions and those concepts in your website, or would you try to see the sources that the LLM is grounding on, and then
Both.
publishing content there? Okay.
Yeah, both. Yeah, but it would tend to be more effective on third-party sites than it would be on your own website, as you might imagine.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Nice. Okay, just final question. 3 book recommendations for our audience. So our audience is mostly people interested in AI, but also in business and management as a whole. But you are open even to recommend a novel. So
Sorry, I'm going to recommend
3 books.
3 books. Oh,
Yeah,
geez. That's a tough one. Geez.
or podcasts. You can like sources of knowledge that you use. Let's put it that way.
Source of knowledge. Well, I have a hack for my own knowledge, which works really well, which is every Sunday I produce a newsletter that goes out to roughly 15,000 people, which is the BlueArray newsletter. And that discipline of me doing it every Sunday, as opposed to using AI to create it or outsourcing it to someone else, means I have to go out and do my research and read the stories, not just the headlines. So I think that's probably the most impactful thing I've ever done, is just do my own newsletter, not for anyone else's benefit, but for my own benefit. The fact that I've got 15,000 people reading it is great, but it's been most helpful to me more than
Yeah,
anything else, I would say. Yeah.
yeah. It's like producing our videos. So people ask me if our videos are like if the scripts are AI generated. Or no, I actually spend some time, thinking about the scripts and writing them, because you need to think a lot about what are your thoughts on a topic, so you can put them on a video and you can record them and feel free and feel safe, to publish it out. So it's an intellectual process actually to showcase a topic, whether it is on a newsletter or whether it is on a YouTube channel, right? So I still keep working on my videos by myself.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. So thank you, Simon, for being here. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to discuss with you. I think you are one of the most active persons, if not the most active person I know, talking about AI in a field that is not AI. Because I follow a
Yeah.
lot of people in the AI domain, but I don't see a lot of doctors talking about AI, or a lot of, I don't know, mechanical engineers talking about AI. But you are pretty involved with skin in the game around the impact of AI in SEO in your industry, and actually tweaking and shifting the way you operate as a business because of these new trends. So congrats for taking it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I have the burden of responsibility of employing a large number of people, plus feel as though there's an industry that I have some responsibility for as well. Even though they're kicking and screaming against this, I'm gonna drag them into this future, whether they're willing or not. I think, regardless, they're going to have to adjust to this sort
Yeah.
of future. So, yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching or listening to this podcast. I hope to see you in the next episode. See you soon. Bye bye.